welcome to another episode of Bite-Sized Strategic Portfolio Management. Topic for this session is going to be flexibility, or don't force the flow. The conversation will largely revolve around what we can do inside of Structure, Planner, and timesheets, and not those as separate products, but how they solve problems and allow your teams to work in whatever methodology best suits their efforts. You may have seen some statistics in other presentations that I'm not going to put a slide in here of today around what percentage of organizations complete an agile transformation. So large organizations that say, all right, we're going to go scaled agile and we're going to do what we can to get there. And almost none of them make it all the way. And that's not because they failed to make it all the way, but it's mostly because organizations realize they don't need to go all the way. Scrum is not appropriate for every single team. And one of the core tenets of Agile is agility. Allow for autonomy inside of teams to be productive in the way that works best for them. And there's some frameworks and guidelines in place to assist that. But the flexibility and the autonomy is critical for actually having an Agile organization, more so than any adoption of SAFe or collection of ceremonies that are adhered to. A good distinction to be aware of is that most of our competition in the space does have a bit of a prescriptive solution. So in order to have your work and effort and initiatives and strategic layers all connected together, you have to go all or nothing and have your teams work in a similar methodology. The downside of that is it causes a lot of change management requirements to change the way people work. The way the Tempo solution works and the way Tempo's SPM works does not require your teams to change the way they work. It just takes that existing framework and it can report that up to a higher level. I mentioned that we're going to be working primarily inside of Structure, Planner, and timesheets, but really the only visualizations we're going to look at here are going to be inside of Structure, and we're going to talk about those integrations in the back end a little bit just so you're aware of what's going on. But the value proposition revolves around the single pane of glass, the visualization into what multiple teams are doing in different departments and having their capacity all tied together. So what we're looking at here is a structure that's got some work that's grouped by SAFe, trains by Epic. So this is a group of teams that have gone scaled agile. They're doing quarterly PI planning. They've got all their sprints. We could see each team, the work that the team has planned, work grouped by PI, work grouped by sprint, and capacity all across the board. If we had any dependency mappings linked here, it could be represented across otherwise as well. A common example of where this can come into play is if you have development teams that are potentially converted into doing a scaled agile or a more traditional agile methodology, but maybe some delivery teams or ITSM teams or HR, any other components or any other departments that live inside of Jira and have work that really matters for the same outcomes, but they're not doing and they're not a good fit for using Scrum and not for the same methodology that the development teams would follow. And Atlassian has been making a bigger and bigger push, especially with work management recently, to get people outside of the development ecosystem using Jira for their work management in a broader sense. So this is going to become a bigger and bigger story for us to tell over time because there'll be more and more companies that have a variety of workflows inside their ecosystem. But the work that's being done still matters together. So if you take the example of a new product feature release that was determined to be important because of customer feedback, we were gathering that in RoadMonk, turned into some idea management, that turned into a roadmap item that now was tied into Structure. So if you look at the connection strategy to execution video, you can see some examples of that. And once that work is all tied together, it's not just development work that has to happen. You have to develop the product, but you may also have some logistical changes to your server infrastructure or to your cloud infrastructure. There could be new training required that involves the HR team that's preparing training materials. There could be training that needs to take place or ITSM customer support enablement sessions that take place. And all of those items can be linked together in the same visualization and the same structure so you can have a really cohesive visualization across the organization of what work needs to take place and when it needs to take place. So in our example here, what we were looking at previously was work that was organized by sprint in a scaled agile environment. And inside that same structure, we now have just these, I color coded them here for you. So the yellow work items were a different slice inside of the structure. This is work that's in a manually scheduled, maybe Kanban or waterfall driven projects, driven teams. We're still looking at it in the same timeline view though, still have the same linkages and dependency blockers available to us. We still have the same capacity that's pulling in from Tempo Planner and the work calendars that are set up for the people on our teams as well. So again, quick recap, when you're talking about the flexibility of teams being able to work in whatever environment or whatever methodology is working best for them, we're primarily thinking about structure, timesheets, and planner for looking at what capacity we have, what time has been spent, but it's still part of the bigger picture. So the work that's being done and managed can be set by the strategy of what we see in Roadbook. The work that's being done can still have costs that are being tracked and can be used to report on the budgeting inside of Cost Tracker. Again, some key talking points are around the flexibility. Most organizations do not have one framework that all of their teams work in, and we really enable them to allow those teams to continue to work without going through big change management processes, adopting and having all kinds of new learning for them. So you allow them to work in the way they're already working, and then we can roll that information up into one view. So now when you're looking at a program level or a portfolio level, you know that your teams are acting and performing in the way that works best for them, but you still have that visualization at the higher level and are still able to make decisions based on dependencies and expectations that are being set.